Is the Dallara P217 LMP2 car to drive like. I want to put this, as I say, into the context of my limited iRacing ability, and I gotta say, for an iRacing high downforce car, it is really good on the rear end. Like, you can catch some slides, you can also quite hard smash the throttle out of the turns. You'll see this when coming out of Woodcut here. You just wait until the car dips in, but flat out full throttle has to do with the matter of fact that this engine probably develops most power on high RPMs, but that still allows you, with a little bit of short shifting, to have a solid rear end despite being flat out. Also, it is a car that you probably need to have a really loose back on. You see, when going here from Mackett to Backett to Chapel, the understeer kicks in pretty quick. That means if you go through stoves, you go through cops, you're running roughly about some 200 kph, 160, 170. Tire's not 100% warmed up yet. But in combination with the high downforce the car offers, those corners are pretty easy to do in a pretty stable way. Also, we're gonna have a look into turn 1 right there, which is surely 200 plus. Going over the first curve, 230, 240 into turn 2. So car does that relatively nice. However, if you look into the slow speed corners though, and apart from this turn 4 where the rear end, when you hit the full throttle and the RPM goes up, the rear end becomes a little twitchy. I think the car overall as a balance is pretty good. In slow speed corners definitely you'll feel the suspension being pretty rigid. That, however, with just running the high downforce preset of iRacing, surely can be fixed with some setup work. But it kind of compares to the rFactor 2 LMP2, because in the slow speed corners the car feels super stiff, the car feels hard to control and needs to be driven very sensitively. Not so much in the high speed corners, as you can see right here. It is a little bit more forgiving. High downforce package really helps building the grip up to a certain extent, of course, but you feel it pretty quickly go away. So if you go into Mackett's Backett's Chapel, as soon as you go into 4th gear and as soon as it definitely hit the 3rd gear, you feel that aerodynamical grip disappear into distance, which I think is sort of true. Remembering what the guys at iRacing Sports Racing set in the virtual Le Mans, an LMP2 car is pretty tricky and difficult to drive in low speed area, because the car is so stiff to set up in order to go quick in the high speed areas with its massive aero downforce. That compromises the low speed a lot, and I think that is pretty nicely hit. That said, I never drove an LMP2 car for real, but of course, as the experts, I want to call them, from iRacing Sports set, it is normal or pretty natural that the car feels heavy and difficult in low speed corners. I think that's pretty well displayed. Overall, running the baseline set, I feel that is a pretty nice car. We are on NTM V7, so the first 1 or 2 laps you need to take it easy, and then the grip really nicely builds. You can see Stowe and all the high speed corners are quite in a good balance here. That set, once again, I don't think I'm running the overall most aggressive set, so not the most fast set indeed, but you can comfortably do some laps. Nicolas Brousseau. So speaking of experts, Nicolas is one of their real life engineers, and probably just snatched up on and saw whether I have learned some lessons on how an LMP2 car drive. Talking about the sound, I saw some onboard sound of LMP2s in real life, of course. I think that sound is pretty close towards it. Definitely better than the rFactor 2 sounds.
Sector 3 time is quick.
So good job on iRacing on that regard. How does this car compare to an rFactor 2, LMP2 in general? I think overall in rFactor 2 the car feels a lot more unconnected to the ground. So you got this typical contact patch feeling on rFactor 2 going on. Even in high speed corners you feel a little bit of sluggishness on rFactor 2 in the LMP2 car, I would say, which means that you sort of turn in and you got that sponge feedback. You turn in, you're like, yeah, if I'm gonna make the corner, yeah, I'm gonna make the corner. But in this car it is pretty much more like you turn in and like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna make the corner not. But I mean, there is more feedback. It feels more solid, more connected on the ground. As much as iRacing, as it is also known for ice racing, has its kind of ungrippiness in the feel, but the actual connection to the ground, the contact patch feels better. It feels more accessible. It feels more feedback. Force feedback, I think, on rFactor 2. LMP2 has one of the best force feedbacks around there. And then in iRacing, for the first time, I feel like pretty decent. You feel bumps, you feel curves, you feel little spins, stuff like that. Or not little spins, but little twitchiness of the car. Try softer anti-roll bar if it's turning too much. You mean softer front anti-roll bar. Okay, we're gonna prove if the engineer's got some knowledge. I can only disconnect there, put it in P1. Gonna do that quickly and then come towards a resume of the car, but finishing the comparison on rFactor 2. The rFactor 2 car has engine modes. We do not have that in iRacing. I'm not sure why. I think Nicholas can tell us on that. Isn't it the case that real life LMP2 doesn't have an engine program as well? I'm not sure if it is the case or not. Can't remember. Yes. Then of course iRacing doesn't have multiple tire compounds compared to rFactor 2. Can consider this a bonus or a benefit or a disadvantage. I don't want to really comment on that because I haven't done enough endurance racing on iRacing. Okay, so that is actually more realistic on iRacing than, as Nicholas tells, LMP2 has no engine maps. On rFactor 2 you've got 4 engine maps, so that is a bit of a difference. Not sure why that is the case then. Usually I wouldn't put out a car with engine maps if it doesn't have any engine maps in real life. Beyond that, I honestly do like the car. I am not the biggest fan of the massive high downforce cars like LMP1. I don't think it drives natural. Like sometimes the grip is so massive and then sometimes it just goes away and snaps. We all know my struggles with the McLaren MP4-30, the F1 car here on iRacing. I have the feeling that as soon as you hit 270 you do one small wrong mistake and you're off completely, having no aerodynamic grip whatsoever. That is just my personal thought on high downforce cars and iRacing in general. Therefore I think this mid to high downforce car feels really nice to me. again, I need to probably have a setup that goes aggressive, which means goes loose in the back. So a cost cap on the engine maps, very much interesting indeed. So in the meanwhile, I'm also ready to tell if Nicholas' setup tip was right, and I think I can tell that with a softer anti-roll bar in the front, you definitely see,
track limits, this lap will be deleted.
Apart from track limits, that the car is a lot more lazy on the front. Yes, it grips sort of nicely still in high downforce areas, but no, in the high downforce areas it doesn't grip as well, that's what I wanted to say. Seemingly grips a little better in the low speed area, as there is a little bit more suspension travel, a little bit more load, but indeed for the high speed sections it feels, lazy is the wrong word, but not enough resistance on the front end in order to withstand the pressure of the downforce. You see us gaining time a lot here in Vale and Clark, making a lap time even identical. Turn 1 though, a little bit understeering there, a lot of understeering to 2. Anti-robot should help a lot here in 3 and 4, which it does nicely. So yeah, that is my thought on the LMP2. How good it will be a racing car, we're gonna see as soon as the season 4 really kicks off.
Sector 1 is quick.
I pretty much enjoy the car, and I'm really thinking towards maybe running it in an ILMS series. Usually I'd run a GTE there because I do not like the HPD. It's a difficult to drive car, but then obviously we need to wait and see what the setups will be like to drive. And that actually takes us towards the end of the stream. Just gonna finish the final lap. So high downforce, we lost 2.5 tenths there. Nuno Cavallo, thank you very much for the follow-up. Appreciate it, man. Close the sight gap to compensate. Bear with me, need to read that out. Oh dear. Close the sight gap to compensate the high speed effects. You have more roll. Oh yeah. Okay, that is probably just the explanation of what's going on in the car. Traction control kicks in nicely. Okay, some more words on the traction control real quick. We got 12 settings in gain and slip, and that gives you a lot of flexibility. I have seen a lot of, or I've just learned in Bel-Air, when you are like just, you know, 75% throttle is more effectiveness, and rather just keep the throttle smashed and let the traction control sort it. So if you're able to go around the corner just by lifting off a little bit and not make the traction control kick in, I think that saves you a lot of time in the current setup. That obviously needs a little bit more research, but yeah, that is my final conclusion towards this LMP2 car. I think I'm gonna race it in the future, that's for sure, so it definitely gets a good grade from me, and I hope you guys can deal a little bit with that feedback, whether you want to buy it. I recommend to buy the content. I think it is a very nicely done car, and I hope it will enable good racing and great racing. So Nicholas, I got 8 on the gain and 5 on the slip. Probably horrible, but that's what I raced in so far. Anyway guys, that's gonna take us to the end. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for being part of this stream. Again, I do hope I can put you into a little bit of a direction, and I was able to help you guys decide on whether you want to go for it, whether you want to buy the car and not buy it. I think it is worth it, and I think we're gonna have nice racing with it in the future.